years ago, John McCabe left his family, he left his friends, and he left this world. In a field that we're going to go to in an hour or so, off Maple Street in Lowell. And throughout this trial, John McCabe, not through his words because he cannot talk, but through his injuries, through the placement of his body, he's going to tell you what happened to him. Throughout the course of this trial, you're going to learn what happened to him that terrible night. Through science, through physical evidence, through photographs, that just will not match what Alan Brown is going to tell you. He will not match anything that he will tell you. Photographs, medical evidence, and science will bring you to the end of this case. It won't be the words of Alan Brown. It will be things that you will be able to rely on. It won't be through faded memories, fed and fabricated stories. That's what I anticipate the evidence will show you with respect to Alan Brown. Fed and fabricated testimony that you will hear from him. Cold cases don't get better with memories. Cold cases get better either with science or facts that cannot change over 43 years. And that's what this case will be all about. The physical evidence will establish, and photographs will establish critical facts for you throughout this trial that will drive you to your verdict. Although there's no DNA, there is physical evidence, there is photographs, there is documented evidence with respect to the crime scene. You will see that. Little things that we'll point out to you today on the view, or I'll point out to you today, such as buildings. The location of buildings haven't changed in the view we're going to go to. Billboards haven't changed. And the location and the manner and method in which John's body was left in that field won't change. That's what will convince you, what you learn through this trial, will convince you and render your verdict of not guilty for Michael. In the end of this trial, we'll be left with faded, fed, and fabricated memories, and then we'll be just that. Now, I want to talk to you, when this trial is long over, I want to talk to you about some dates that you will remember. You've heard what happened on the evening of September 26, 1969, and the discovery of John's body the following morning. Those events and the discovery of his body, the things he had done the night before, you will always remember. But I want to talk to you about some other dates as we move forward, and I will jump around a little bit. They will become clear to you throughout the trial, but I just want to touch on them. In the days following the discovery of John McCabe's body, both he had been last seen in the area of the Knights of Columbus dance. You'll hear a lot about this dance and the Oaks and things of that nature on Route 38 in Tewksbury. Because his body was found in Lowell, you will see throughout this trial that in the days and weeks and months following, a joint effort between the Lowell Police Department as well as the Tewksbury Police Department to conduct as much information, gather as much information, conduct countless interviews, and record as much information as they could. Dozens and dozens of people were questioned. We anticipate you'll hear from some witnesses that were involved in that process, but dozens and dozens of people were questioned. Mr. O'Reilly tells you in his opening that Michael gave different versions. Michael was questioned by Lowell and Tewksbury Police, as were dozens of other youngsters. Michael was 16 at the time. He was questioned with Walter Schill and questioned with a number of people. They asked Michael, "What did you do? What did you do last night? Who were you with?" The police initially had information that John McCabe had been given a ride from the dance, after the dance, by Nancy Williams. You will hear testimony about that. Later, the police realized it was through their investigation that John McCabe had actually been given a ride to the dance. And so because the name Nancy Williams came up, you will see during the trial, they wanted to know who Nancy Williams was with that night, because they thought she gave John a ride after the dance. Nancy Williams was questioned. "Who were you with, Nancy?" "I was with these people." Those people were questioned. And in the course of Nancy saying I was with Michael Ferreira, they questioned Michael Ferreira on the 27th of September. Michael, who were you with? 43 years ago, Michael told the police. After school, it was a Friday, I was with Nancy Williams. We had brought her sister to Lowell. We had come back. We were with other people. At one point, Michael, in his statement to the police, when questioned, did you see Kevin Bevilacqua? Yes, we saw Kevin Bevilacqua. Did you see John McCabe? Yes, we saw John McCabe. We picked him up hitchhiking near the Novitiate, which we'll drive by today, and dropped him off at Chandler in Maine because he was going to the dance. What did you do thereafter, Michael? Who were you with? I was Walter Shelley. I was with Robert Ryan. I was with Jane Thompson. I was with Robert Brown. Robert Brown, the same last name as that guy that's going to testify in front of you with a cooperation agreement. Robert Brown is Alan Brown's brother. Michael told the police where he was and who he was with on the night, Friday night, the 26th of September. And the police checked all that out. Not only did they take Michael's word, they went and questioned everybody he talked to. Elaine Sutton Callahan, I anticipate you'll hear from her. Mr. O'Reilly talked about her. You'll hear from her testimony in October, about a month after John's body was found, during a ride to get beer in Pelham, New Hampshire. A bunch of teenagers. Michael, one of them, with Jerry Adair, Lester Adair, and Elaine Callahan. In the course of the drive to Pelham to get beer on a Sunday afternoon in October, people were questioning, what happened to John McCabe? What happened to John McCabe? Hey, are they still questioning you, Lester? Are they still questioning you, Jerry? Are they still questioning you, Michael? Yeah, I'm still getting questioned. I'm still getting questioned. And Michael, a 16-year-old prankster, says, I did it. And then scares Elaine, and she said, stop kidding, Michael. And he smiled and said he was kidding. You'll hear from Elaine Sutton when she testifies before you, and she will acknowledge, as she has done before when I asked her questions at a transfer hearing. Yes, Michael was a 16-year-old boy. He was just kidding. He smiled. Not something to joke about, but not an admission to murder. Now, in 1969 and 70, the Lowell police, as well as Tewksbury police, followed hundreds of leads. Over the weeks, months, and years, they followed hundreds of leads. But unfortunately, the case grew cold. The 70s and the 80s and the 90s, there was zero activity. Not one in a period of 30 years. Sadly, not one report was generated regarding what happened to John McCabe out there in the field. In 2002, you'll hear from Jack Ward. O'Reilly told you about this Jack Ward fellow. And he, in 2002, was interviewed by the police, by Lieutenant Sullivan and Jerry Wayne, the Lowell detective who has now passed away. And Jack Ward, in 2002, said, hey, did you have a pig roast? Was Mike Ferreira at the pig roast? Jack Ward, I expect what you will hear him say, that rumors, even in 1997, 1998, when the group of Tewksbury guys would get together, the questions would come up. Hey, whatever happened to John McCabe? Why hasn't anything ever been done about this? It's been 30 years. And you'll hear from Jack Ward. He will tell you that there were rumors, even 30 years later, about what happened. Rumors blaming people, rumors blaming individuals. And during the course of this cookout, Jack Ward, in a conversation with Michael Ferreira, Mike said, I don't know, Walter Shelley probably did it. Jack Ward will tell you that the rumors, Jack Ward had heard rumors. He had heard rumors about Shelley. He had heard rumors about drug gangs, about sexual assaults. He had heard various rumors throughout the years. And Jack Ward will tell you that's all during that conversation at the cookout was. Mike just talking about rumors. So in the course of that investigation, Jack Ward told Mr. McCabe, William McCabe, they were friendly. You will hear that Jack Ward was a boyhood friend of John McCabe, maintained a friendship with Mr. McCabe, John's dad. And in the course of a conversation years later, the pig roast or cookout was in 97 or 98, sometime in early 2000, Jack Ward said to Mr. McCabe, hey, Mike Ferreira said Shelley probably did it a couple of years ago. Maybe you ought to tell the police that. The police followed up on it. This is really the first first investigation now, 30 years. They follow up on it. They find Michael and they talk to Michael. Mike, what do you remember? What do you remember about the night John McCabe was killed? And Michael told the police, now, picture this. This is 2003, 34 years later. Asking Mike Ferreira, what do you remember from September 26th, 1969? What do you remember from that night? I remember being questioned by the police. I remember that Nancy gave John a ride from Nevishier up to Chandler and Maine to the dance. I remember hanging out with friends. I remember hanging out with Shelley. I remember cleaning a restaurant. I remember doing certain things. Well, as you will hear and as you can expect in the course of this trial, when 34 years pass, from when you're 16, add 34 years when you're questioned about what you did on a typical night in high school, Michael's story didn't change. Michael just couldn't remember 34 years ago on a particular night. He remembered some of the details. He remembered giving the ride. But he didn't remember who he was with. And they asked him, Mike, did you say something at a pig roast about Shelley 4 or 5 years ago, about something about Shelley saying that he killed John McCabe? And Mike says, words to the effect, yeah, I didn't say he did it. I said he probably did it because those were the rumors everybody was saying. Perpetuating rumors. Mike didn't deny anything to the police when he was questioned about that in 2003. He told them, yeah, I said that. I don't know anything about it. The police, well, what else do you know? Mike told Lieutenant Sullivan and Jerry Wayne, all I knew 34 years ago, I told the police. I don't really remember the details. 34 years later. Michael, when they'd asked, well, who were you with? Who did you hang around with back then? Walter Shelley, Robert Ryan, Alan Brown. Michael does, 34 years later, give the police Alan Brown's name. Yeah, that's who I hung out with. Could I have been hanging out with him on the 26th of September 1969? I could have been. I could have. So, 2007, Mike says Alan Brown's name in 2003. 4 years pass. Nothing happens in this case. Jerry Wayne and Lieutenant Sullivan in 2007 go to visit Alan Brown. And Alan Brown is questioned. What do you know about the John McCabe murder in 1969? I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, I was friends with Shelley. Yeah, I was friends with Ferreira, but I don't remember anything about it. And that was it, 2007. End of the interview. Fast forward to 2011. There's really nothing done in the case in another 4 years, 2011 to beginning of 2011. What changes in 2011, in January of 2011, and you will hear this during the trial from Detective Coughlin. She takes over the case. Detective Linda Coughlin takes over the case in January of 2011. And she reviews material that has been compiled at that point for 41 years. And she concludes Walter Shelley must be responsible. Because somewhere along the way, Jack Ward says something about jealousy over Marla Scheinberg. So Linda Coughlin, when she takes over the case, predisposes, without investigating, that Walter Shelley must be somehow involved. So let's turn our investigation to anything to do with Walter Shelley or Mike Ferreira. So they go question Alan Brown again. Now this is 2 years ago. February 17th, 2011, they question Alan Brown. Alan Brown, consistent with his memory 4 years before, to Lieutenant Sullivan and Detective Coughlin. I don't remember anything. Just like the police questioned me at my house a couple of years ago. I just don't remember anything. And the police help him. You've got to remember something. And Alan Brown says, well, when the police questioned me in 2007, I spoke with my mother. She remembers this. I went in the service right after. I was 18, I went in the service. I don't remember. But family members told me they remember this. And from 07 to 11, he said, yeah, I asked people about it. They told me, yeah, they remember this. I just don't remember. And Alan Brown says, I remember Shelley. I remember Ferreira. I just don't remember being with them on the 26th. He tells Alan Brown in February, 2 years ago, February 11th, tells the police, even though I don't remember this, I'm willing to go under hypnosis. You're telling me I should remember, police officers and detectives, you're telling me that these are the prime suspects. I'll go under hypnosis. I'm willing to do that. And the police say, well, we'll get back to you. March 2nd, 3 weeks later, March 2nd, Alan Brown is back down at Lowell PD, March of 2011. It starts out the same. Look, now I've done internet research on this. I've looked at the internet. I know the boy was killed. I know what you've told me the last 2 interviews. I just don't remember this. But this time the approach changes by Detective Coughlin. This time, instead of saying, okay, well, that's fine, you don't remember, have a good day. The conduct that occurred during the interrogation changes. You would expect, and I believe you'll hear some testimony about this, there's a process of recording interrogations and interviews. On March 2nd of 2011, there is no recording of what transpired between 3 detectives and Alan Brown for 4 or 5 hours of interrogation. There is no recording of what happened during that process. But I would expect you will hear the following evidence. He is questioned for hours by 2 Lowell detectives, and a federal agent, questioned for hours. He is told, look, your best friends are the prime suspects. You've got to know something. He's repeatedly told, you're lying. You're involved in this. You are involved in this. He's told, and you'll hear during the course of the trial, it's okay for the police to fabricate things. For example, Alan Brown was told, Ferreira says you were with him that night and you guys are involved. Michael Ferreira never said to the police or anyone else he was involved other than a joke to Elaine County. But Alan Brown is told, he's saying you did this with him. So Alan Brown, unrecorded, is hearing all of this evidence. He maintains, I don't have any memory of this. They continue to tell him, you're lying, you're involved. And then Alan Brown, on March 2nd, tells the police, listen, you guys are telling me I'm involved, you're telling me others are saying I'm involved, you're telling me I'm lying, I'm afraid to go to jail. You guys are accusing me of murder. I'm afraid to go to jail. He starts to tell the police, maybe I was involved, and I have repressed memory. Maybe I was involved and I just don't remember this. And then the police say, no, you're lying, you were involved. And he said, these words, if I told you I was involved, it would just be fantasy, detective. I wasn't involved. And the questioning continues. And he continues to say, this is just fantasy, maybe this is repressed memory. And I asked Alan Brown, and I'll ask him before you, I asked him about the questions he answered on the 2nd, because he's going in for another interview a week later. But I asked him, when you told those detectives you had nothing to do with this on March 2nd, were you telling them the truth? He said, yeah, I was telling them the truth. When I told them I had nothing to do with this, I was telling them the truth. Now, he's back in, March 9th. Back in for another interrogation. Again, you will not hear a recording of what happened in the hours behind the closed doors at Lowell PD. But Alan Brown begins insisting, I have no knowledge of this. I know that you've been questioning me. I have no knowledge. I don't know what you're talking about. This is either, it's possible it's repressed memory, it's possible I don't remember, but I'm not involved in this. And then Detective Coughlin continues to accuse him of murder. He continues his discussions about, now on March 9th, discussions about him spending the rest of his life in jail. That's what Alan Brown is focusing on because of what he's being told. He's being told, you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. So they say, talk to us. And so Alan Brown, version 1. says, as we already know, had nothing to do with this. I don't know anything. Version 2, on the 9th of March. Alan Brown tells this story, that he's cleaning a restaurant on the 26th of September 1969. And while he's cleaning a restaurant, Shelley, Marla Shiner, and Mike Ferreira pick him up. And John McCabe died accidentally. And then Shelley and Ferreira put him in a field, and Alan Brown stayed in a car. That's version 2. Version 3. Version 3 is, you know what? I don't know why I just told you version 2. That's not true. Version 3 is, I'm back to this never happened. Why are you guys telling me I'm involved in this? Version 4. He's told the next day by Shelley and Ferreira that John McCabe was killed accidentally. Version 5. Alan Brown now says he's with Shelley and Ferreira and Marla Shiner, but he's in John McCabe, but he's dropped off before anything bad happened to John McCabe. Then, at that point, Alan Brown is confronted. He's told, the interview starts, and he is told by Detective Coughlin what she thinks happened to John McCabe. And Detective Coughlin has told him Shelley and Ferreira are the prime suspects. Detective Coughlin has told them that he's involved. And then Detective Coughlin begins to show him some troubling photographs. And you will see these photographs in the course of this trial. But she shows him a photograph of young 15-year-old John McCabe tied in a field, his hands bound, his feet bound, his neck bound, his mouth taped, and his eyes taped, left in a field off Maple Street that we will be in an hour. He has shown that photograph. During his denials, he has shown that photograph. But he's being told he's involved. He's being told that Shelley and Ferreira are involved and they did it with him. You now know, just hearing that, what happened to John McCabe. You know by the photographs Detective Coughlin showed him that you could come up with version 6. You know you can come up with version 6. You know his feet are bound, you know his hands are bound, and you know he's taped. And you know there's a rope around his neck. So version 6 comes out. Version 6 is Shelley and Ferreira are driving around. They pick up Alan Brown. Shelley is jealous over John McCabe because he believes John McCabe is flirting with Marla Shiner. Let me tell you something. I expect you will hear from Marla Shiner. Marla Shiner in 1969 was 12 years old. I believe she will tell you the Commonwealth's jealousy theory that Walter Shelley was jealous over John McCabe because John McCabe liked Marla Shiner. I believe you will hear evidence that Marla Shiner wasn't even dating Walter Shelley, September 26th of 1969. Marla Shiner is never mentioned for 35 years. So because of Alan Brown's story, Shelley's jealous, they're going to teach him a lesson, and they tie him up. Alan Brown tells Detective Coughlin that we tied him up just like in the movie. You will hear evidence during this trial from Alan Brown. When I talked to you earlier about Alan Brown being fed and fabricating his testimony and fabricating what he's going to tell you, he was told by Mr. O'Reilly during these interrogations, well, didn't you tie up John McCabe just like in the movie, The French Connection? So guess what Alan Brown does? He adopts, we tied him up just like in the movie, The French Connection. Well, the problem is, French Connection didn't come out until 1972. 3 years later. He's being fed, and he's fabricating a story that he is going to give you. So he's told, yes, he's left in the field to teach him a lesson. They go back, and he's dead. You will see over the course of this trial that the story that Alan Brown is going to tell you just does not make sense. It does not fit the physical evidence, it does not fit the scientific evidence, and it will not fit the medical evidence. I showed you that picture, I don't have to show it to you again. But Alan Brown told police, and he will tell you, that John McCabe was left hog-tied with a rope from his neck to his feet. I believe he'll tell you that during this trial. You'll see during the course of this investigation now that has lasted 41 years, time was running out for whoever killed John McCabe. Detective Coughlin took over this case and she focused her investigation on Walter Shelley and Michael Ferreira. When she took over this investigation, she ignored or overlooked or didn't see things that I will suggest to you will hear that will haunt you. About a week after, less than a week after John's body was found in that field, police knew certain things that were with his body and that were not with his body. And you will hear evidence that on the 29th of September, 3 days after they found John's body in that field, a man called a priest, called a man by the name of Father Thomas Walsh from St. Margaret's Parish. And he told Father Walsh, I killed that boy, Father. I killed that boy, and I want to turn myself into the police. Will you help me do that? Because the last time I did that, they beat me up. Will you do that? The priest set it up. But the police were at the parish, at the rectory at 8 o'clock when the caller was in to go to the rectory. The caller called Father Walsh back and said, Father, why did you call the police? I know they're in the rectory. I saw them go in the rectory. I've been waiting outside for an hour. Why did you call the police? And he hung up. 2 days later, Father Dennis Cahill, St. Peter's Parish, received a similar call. The caller told Father Cahill, look, I tried to turn myself in the other day. I killed that boy. And I tried to turn myself in, but another priest called the police on me. Will you help me? And Father Cahill said, how do I know? How do I know you killed that boy? And the caller said, you can ask the boy's parents and the police, Father. The one thing that wasn't recovered with his body is his black belt. And I have it. The police never released the fact that John's belt was never recovered with his body. Never released that. Only one person would know that black belt was never recovered with that body. And he also told Father Cahill, and you won't find fingerprints, Father. And the police would not know for 2 months until forensic examination of that tape that found John's slits in his eyes came back with black material from gloves. The police would not know until December 2nd of 69 that black gloves were used, yet the caller to the police knew. Detective Coughlin, while she chasing down Walter Shelley and Michael Ferreira, an alleged 16-year-old prank, she ignored critical facts like that. And there's more. And there is more. 1974, 4.5 years after John McCabe's body was found in that field, a guy named Richard Santos was arrested for a similar abduction and rape of a young girl. And in the course of that abduction and rape of that girl, he told that girl, I've done this before. She was abducted on Route 38 in Tucson. Abducted into a car, handcuffed, tied, assaulted, and in the course of that assault on her, he said, I've done this to others before. And He left her in Tewksbury behind the branding iron coming to 38. Her ankles were tied. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her mouth was taped shut with white tape, and her eyes were taped shut. And he manually strangled her, leaving deep furrows with a rope, and left her for dead on a set of railroad tracks. She survived. She survived. Thought she was dead, but she survived. And the police turned their attention to Richard Santos with respect to John McCabe, but that case was never followed up. Linda Coughlin never even looked at Richard Santos, never even looked at the possibility of the college to the priest or Richard Santos or numerous other suspects that came and went over the last 43 years. She focused her attention, and she got Alan Brown to say what he's going to tell you. You'd expect during the course of this trial that Alan Brown was present in the field that evening, was present when John McCabe died and was tied, strangled. You'd expect he'd know some critical facts. Mr. Brown has testified before, some preliminary hearings prior to this jury trial. He has testified before, and he was asked particular questions by Mr. O'Reilly regarding what actually happened out in that field. He was asked, what happened? I think he produced a roll of tape and put some tape on his mouth. Mr. O'Reilly says, what color was the tape? Alan Brown says, I think it was gray. Mr. O'Reilly says, could it have been white? The answer, it could have been. Question, they put it on his mouth? Answer, that's all I remember happening. Yes, so he would stop yelling, and we couldn't hear him. It's clearly you'll see on his mouth. But that's all he remembers, just the mouth. Where did he tie the rope? Around his ankles is the answer to Mr. O'Reilly's question. Question, and where else? Alan Brown, you would expect he would know these answers. And around his wrists was the answer. The next question from Mr. O'Reilly, and where else? Answer, that's all I remember, tying his wrists and his ankles. Question, not his neck? Answer, no. Didn't you remember telling the police a couple of weeks ago? Answer, I just remember his ankles and his wrists. I don't know why they would tie a rope around his neck. Question, I'm sorry? Answer, I don't know why they would tie a rope around his neck. And Mr. O'Reilly at that point suggests that Alan Brown take a recess and review some material. The person that is going to get before you and tell you that he's involved in a homicide had to take a recess to review police reports. Mm-hmm. And a recess was had, and Mr. O'Reilly said, did you have the opportunity to discuss with Mr. Callahan the notes that were taken of your interview? Answer, yes, I did. Question, does that refresh your memory? Yes, it does. Whereabouts were the ropes placed on Mr. McCabe's body? Answer, on his wrists, his ankles, and from his neck to his ankles. Question, so when you say neck to ankles, is that a rope connecting his neck to his ankles? Answer, yes. Now, I had an opportunity to ask Mr. Alan Brown some questions about that. Why he would tell, under oath, same oath he'll take before you, why he would tell Mr. O'Reilly. Why didn't you remember a rope around the neck? Why did you have to take, if you were there, why did you have to take a recess to read Detective Coughlin's version of what happened? When I asked him that, my question was, it was Mr. O'Reilly's suggestion that you take a recess, right? Answer, yes. That the grand jury take a recess, right, was my question? Answer, he wanted to make sure I had my facts straight. He wanted to make sure I had my facts straight. And I said, because your facts weren't straight, were they? Correct. They weren't. Alan Brown is going to get up before you. The biggest question that may remain in your minds after this trial, you probably don't have the answer. The question is, why